You know that feeling when you're about to introduce your social media influencer wife to your traditional New England parents? It's like bringing a stripper to a church bake sale, technically legal, but everyone's going to remember it for all the wrong reasons. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Mark Thompson, and I teach high school English in suburban Massachusetts. At 35, I should have known better than to marry Jessica Martinez, a woman whose entire existence revolved around Instagram likes and TikTok views. But love makes you stupid, and stupidity makes you blind. Mark, seriously, you need to chill, Jessica snapped as she applied another layer of glossy lipstick in our bedroom mirror. I'm not changing my outfit just because your parents are stuck in the 1950s. I stared at the black leather dress that barely covered her assets. Jess, it's just dinner with my folks. Maybe something a little more conservative? She whirled around, her perfectly contoured face twisted in annoyance. I am not your property, Mark. I dress how I want, when I want. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. The drive to my parents' colonial home in Lexington was tense. Jessica spent the entire 20 minutes live streaming to her followers, completely ignoring my attempts at conversation. Hey, gorgeous people, she chirped into her phone. About to meet the in-laws. Wish me luck. They're super traditional, so this should be interesting. She giggled and blew a kiss at the camera. My parents, Helen and Tom Thompson, had been married for 38 years. Dad was a retired bank manager, Mom a former librarian. They believed in handshakes, eye contact, and putting your phone away during dinner. Jessica believed in none of these things. The moment we walked through their front door, I could feel the temperature drop. Mom's smile was polite, but strained as she took in Jessica's outfit. Dad's handshake was brief, his eyes already showing disappointment. Welcome to our home, Jessica, Mom said, her voice carrying that particular New England politeness that masked deep concern. Thanks, Mrs. T, Jessica replied, already pulling out her phone. Mind if I get a quick selfie? Your house is so vintage. Dinner was a disaster wrapped in small talk and covered with awkward silence. Jessica dominated the conversation, describing her brand and her content strategy, while my parents exchanged glances across the table. So, Jessica, Dad finally said, cutting into his pot roast, Mark tells us you're in marketing? Jessica laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. Oh, Mr. Thompson, I'm an influencer. I have over 50,000 followers across all platforms. I make more in a month than Mark makes in 3. The silence that followed could have been bottled and sold as uncomfortable. Mom cleared her throat. That's nice, dear. And what exactly do you influence people to do? Buy things, mostly. Live their best lives. Be authentic. Jessica was recording again, panning the camera across the dining room. I'm all about female empowerment and breaking down outdated social norms. I watched my father's jaw tighten. He'd worked 60-hour weeks for 30 years to pay off this house, to send me to college, to build something lasting. Jessica's casual dismissal of outdated norms was like spitting on his grave. After dinner, Dad pulled me aside in his study, the same room where he'd helped me with homework 20 years ago. Son, he said quietly, you can't build a future with someone who treats your family like a stage prop. I wanted to defend Jessica, to explain that she was just nervous, that this was how her generation communicated. But the words died in my throat because deep down, I knew he was right. When we got home, Jessica immediately uploaded a selfie she'd taken with my mother in the background, looking uncomfortable and out of place. The caption read, Dinner with the Addams family. Awkward, blessed, authentic. My phone started buzzing within minutes. Text after text from friends, colleagues, and acquaintances who followed Jessica's social media. The humiliation was instant and public. That's when I realized my wife wasn't just thoughtless, she was cruel. 3 weeks after the dinner disaster, I started noticing things. Little things that my English teacher brain cataloged like evidence in a mystery novel. Jessica's late-night business calls, her sudden obsession with the gym, the way she'd angle her phone away from me when texting. My friend Eddie Martinez, no relation to Jessica despite the shared surname, worked in IT for a local marketing firm. We'd been buddies since college, bonded by our shared love of sarcasm and craft beer. Eddie had always been skeptical of Jessica, calling her Instagram Barbie behind her back. "Dude, you need to see this," Eddie said, sliding his phone across the table at Murphy's Pub on a Thursday night. "Someone forwarded this to me." The screenshot showed Jessica at her gym, Fit Life Premium, doing squats while her trainer, Brian Walsh, spotted her. His hands were positioned a little too intimately, and Jessica's expression was pure flirtation. The timestamp showed it was taken during one of her solo workout sessions. "Who sent this?" I asked, though part of me already knew I didn't want the answer. "Anonymous account. But Mark, there's more." Eddie showed me a series of Instagram stories from Jessica's close friends list, a feature I apparently wasn't part of. In them, Jessica was practically draped over Brian, a muscle-bound 28-year-old who looked like he'd been carved from protein powder and steroids. The captions were worse than the photos: "Best workout partner ever," and "Some people just get you, you know?" That night, I pretended to be asleep when Jessica came home at 11:30 p.m., claiming she'd been at a networking event. She smelled like men's cologne, not mine. The next morning brought a text from Trina Walsh, Jessica's supposed best friend, and I now realized, Brian's sister. The message was clearly meant for someone else. "Brian says Jessica's the best he's ever had. Better than his ex for sure. Oops, wrong chat. So sorry, Mark." I stared at the message for a full minute, feeling something cold and sharp settle in my chest. The oops was about as convincing as a $3 bill. Within an hour, my phone was exploding with messages from mutual friends, all pretending to be concerned while obviously fishing for drama. The gossip mill in our social circle was efficient and merciless. Sarah Chen from the Teacher's Lounge. "Hey Mark, saw some weird posts about Jessica. You okay?" Mike Rodriguez from my bowling league. "Bro, people are talking. Just thought you should know." Even my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, knocked on my door with a casserole and a concerned expression that screamed, "I know about your wife's affair, and I brought comfort food." I spent the weekend playing detective, going through phone bills and credit card statements. The evidence painted a clear picture. Jessica had been having an affair with Brian for at least 2 months. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel charges on days when she claimed to be shopping with Trina. Uber rides to Brian's apartment complex. The final nail in the coffin came when I found Jessica's laptop open on Sunday morning. She'd forgotten to log out of her Instagram DMs, and the conversation with Brian was right there, explicit and cruel. Brian: "Can't wait to see you tonight. Your husband still clueless?" Jessica: "Mark's so boring he wouldn't notice if I brought you home for dinner. He's too busy grading papers and being pathetic." Brian: "Poor guy. Maybe we should put him out of his misery." Jessica: "Lowell maybe, though he does pay for my lifestyle, for now." I took screenshots of everything. Every message, every photo, every cruel joke at my expense. My hands were shaking, but my mind was crystal clear. Jessica waltzed into the kitchen an hour later, fresh from her morning yoga class, completely oblivious to the fact that her world was about to burn down around her. "Morning, babe," she chirped, kissing my cheek while simultaneously checking her phone. "I'm thinking of doing a couples workout video with Brian. You know, for the channel. Fitness content is really trending right now." The audacity was breathtaking. She was literally planning to monetize her affair. "Sounds great," I said, my voice steady. "I'm sure your followers would love that." That night, my mother called. Mom never called after 9 p.m. unless someone had died or something was seriously wrong. "Mark," she said quietly, "I saw Jessica's video from today. The one at the gym. I'm so sorry, honey." The video showed Jessica and Brian in what she'd captioned as a friendship workout, but anyone with eyes could see it was foreplay with weights. The comments were brutal, a mix of thirsty followers and people who clearly knew exactly what was happening. "I know, Mom," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "I know about all of it." "What are you going to do?" I looked across the living room at Jessica, who was editing her latest post, completely absorbed in her digital kingdom of lies and attention. "I'm going to teach her a lesson," I said. "If she wants to play with fire, let's see how hot it gets." The thing about being a high school English teacher is that you learn a lot about human nature. You watch kids lie, cheat, manipulate, and backstab each other with the casual cruelty that only comes from believing you're the hero of your own story. Jessica, I realized, had never outgrown that phase. But if she wanted to cast me as the boring, pathetic husband in her little drama, I was happy to oblige. What she didn't realize was that I was about to rewrite the script. My transformation started small. I moved into the guest bedroom, claiming I had insomnia and didn't want to disturb her beauty sleep. Jessica barely noticed. She was too busy planning her next collaboration with Brian. I canceled the credit cards that were in my name, but that she used freely. When she tried to buy a $300 workout outfit and the card was declined, she called me in a panic. "Mark, there's something wrong with the visa." "Oh, that," I said, grading papers at my desk. "I canceled it, trying to cut back on unnecessary expenses." "Unnecessary? Mark, this is for my brand." "Right, your brand, which, according to your DMs with Brian, is apparently homewrecker chic." The silence on the other end was delicious. "I don't know what you're talking about," she finally said, but her voice had lost its confidence. "Sure you don't. By the way, I changed the locks. You'll find your new key under the flower pot, the one your boyfriend pissed on last week when he thought nobody was watching." I hung up before she could respond. That's when I met Rosa Delgado, another local influencer who'd been feuding with Jessica for months over sponsored content and follower counts. Rosa was everything Jessica wasn't: smart, strategic, and genuinely funny. She also hated Jessica with the burning passion of 1,000 suns. "Your wife," Rosa told me over coffee at a neutral cafe, "is a cancer on the influencer community. She steals content, lies about engagement numbers, and treats her followers like walking wallets." "Tell me something I don't know," I said. Rosa smiled, and I realized I'd found my secret weapon. "How would you feel about some collaboration of our own?" The plan we hatched was beautiful in its simplicity. Jessica's entire life revolved around her image, her brand, her carefully curated online persona. So that's where we'd hit her, right in the ego. Our first strike was surgical. Rosa had connections at Fit Life Premium, where Brian worked as a trainer. It turned out Brian had been violating company policy by sleeping with clients, and his employment contract had a morality clause that the gym's corporate owners took very seriously. I didn't have to do anything except provide Rosa with the evidence I'd already collected. She handled the rest. Brian's car was parked in the gym lot when I arrived for what Jessica thought was my first ever workout session. She'd been thrilled when I suggested it, seeing it as an opportunity to show off her fitness journey to her followers. What she didn't know was that Eddie had spent the previous night having some fun with Brian's precious BMW. Nothing dangerous or illegal, just creative. The exhaust pipe was packed with biodegradable glitter that would create a spectacular light show when the engine started. The radio had been reprogrammed to play children's lullabies at maximum volume, and Eddie, in a stroke of genius, had used washable paint to write "Homewrecker" under the hood in letters big enough to be seen from space. Jessica was filming her couple's workout introduction when Brian got the call from his manager. I watched his face go through several shades of red as he listened to what I assumed was news about his impending unemployment. "What do you mean, inappropriate conduct?" Brian said, loud enough for Jessica's camera to pick up. "That's bullshit. I never—" "Okay, fine, maybe with a few clients, but that's not against the rules." Jessica stopped filming, her influencer instincts finally kicking in, but it was too late. The video had been live streaming to her Instagram story. Brian stormed out to the parking lot, Jessica and I following. The moment he started his car, the glitter explosion began. It looked like a unicorn had been murdered by a disco ball. The lullaby music was so loud that half the gym came outside to see what was happening. As Brian sat there, covered in sparkles and serenaded by "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," I leaned against Jessica's shoulder and said, just loud enough for her microphone to catch, "Was it the sparkles or the shame that tipped you off?" The video went viral within hours. Not the kind of viral Jessica was used to. This was the kind that destroyed reputations instead of building them. That evening, Trina called me directly. Jessica's supposed best friend had apparently decided to switch sides now that the ship was sinking. "Mark, I'm so sorry," she said, though she didn't sound sorry at all. "Jessica made me promise not to tell you about Brian, but I have screenshots of everything. Do you want them?" I did want them. Trina's evidence was even more damaging than what I'd found on my own. Text messages where Jessica mocked my family, my job, even my appearance. Photos from hotel rooms. Plans to phase out our marriage once her follower count hit a certain number. The most damaging screenshot was from a group chat between Jessica, Brian, and Trina, where they'd discussed the best way to manage Mark's inevitable breakdown for maximum social media sympathy. "Poor Jess," the plan read, "stuck with a controlling husband who can't handle her success. Mental health awareness, toxic masculinity, free Jessica." They'd already written the narrative for my destruction. Too bad they'd underestimated the author. By the time Jessica came home that night, I'd already uploaded everything to a private cloud account and sent copies to Eddie, Rosa, and my lawyer cousin Lisa for safekeeping. Jessica tried to seduce me, then threaten me, then gaslight me into believing I'd imagined the whole affair. When none of that worked, she went for the nuclear option: tears. "Mark, baby, I made a mistake. Brian means nothing to me. You're my husband, my soulmate, my everything." I looked at her, this woman I'd once loved enough to marry, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Jessica," I said, "you're absolutely right. I am your everything, your meal ticket, your safety net, your backup plan. But here's the thing about backup plans. Sometimes the original plan fails so spectacularly that even the backup won't save you." I handed her a printout of her most damaging text messages. "Pack your bags. You've got until morning to get out of my house." As I walked away, I heard her scream something about lawyers and alimony and ruining my life. I almost laughed. She still didn't understand that her life was the one in ruins. She just didn't know it yet. Jessica didn't leave quietly. She spent the night calling everyone in our social circle, spinning a story about my sudden mental breakdown and controlling behavior. By morning, she'd posted a tearful Instagram video about emotional abuse and finding the strength to leave. The problem with Jessica's strategy was that she'd forgotten about Rosa, who had been documenting everything from the beginning. While Jessica was playing the victim card, Rosa was systematically dismantling her credibility with receipts, screenshots, and video evidence. The first sponsor to drop Jessica was a local boutique that specialized in empowering women's fashion. The owner, Maria Santos, had seen the gym glitter incident and done some digging of her own. "We can't be associated with someone who represents the opposite of our values," Maria told a local blogger. "Cheating on your spouse isn't empowering. It's just cruel." The boutique's announcement triggered an avalanche. Within 48 hours, Jessica lost 3 major sponsorship deals and saw her follower count drop by 10,000. The comments on her posts shifted from supportive to savage. Homewrecker Barbie strikes again. Your husband deserves better. This is what happens when you confuse followers with friends. Meanwhile, I was getting messages of support from people I barely knew. Apparently, the story of the cheating influencer and her revenge-seeking teacher husband had struck a nerve with a lot of people. Eddie and I decided to escalate things at the Suburban Social Media Summit, a local event where influencers gathered to network and show off their latest content. Jessica had been planning to attend for months, seeing it as an opportunity to rebuild her image. What she didn't know was that Rosa had convinced the event organizers to feature a panel on ethics in influencer marketing, with Jessica as an unwilling case study. The morning of the summit, Brian's car was mysteriously towed from the event parking lot. Eddie had called in a favor from his cousin who worked for the towing company, claiming the BMW was parked in a handicapped spot. It wasn't, but by the time Brian could prove that, the event would be over. Jessica arrived at the summit in full damage control mode, wearing a conservative dress and carrying a designer handbag that screamed, "I'm still successful, please sponsor me." She'd even toned down her makeup, going for a relatable girl-next-door look that fooled exactly nobody. The ethics panel was scheduled for 2 p.m., right after lunch, when the audience would be alert and engaged. Rosa had prepared a presentation that was both educational and devastating, using Jessica's affair as a real-time example of how influencers could damage their own brands through poor personal choices. I watched from the back of the room as Rosa clicked through slide after slide of evidence. Jessica's face went from confident to confused to horrified as her dirty laundry was aired in front of 300 of her peers and potential sponsors. "The modern influencer," Rosa said, advancing to a slide that showed Jessica's text messages about managing Mark's breakdown, "must understand that authenticity means taking responsibility for your actions, not manipulating your audience's emotions for engagement." Jessica tried to leave, but the room was packed and she was sitting in the middle of a row. She was trapped, forced to watch as her reputation disintegrated in real time. The Q&A session was brutal. Question after question about ethics, responsibility, and the impact of personal behavior on professional credibility. Jessica wasn't specifically named, but everyone knew who they were talking about. After the panel, I found Jessica in the parking lot, crying next to her car while scrolling through the social media fallout. The summit hashtag was trending locally, and not in a good way for her. "You," she said when she saw me, her voice raw with rage and humiliation. "You did this. You destroyed everything I worked for." "I didn't destroy anything, Jess. I just turned on the light so everyone could see what was already there." She lunged at me, all fake nails and fury, but I stepped aside and let her stumble into her own car. The security guard who'd been watching from across the lot came over to check if I was okay. "You want to press charges?" he asked, eyeing Jessica like she was a rabid animal. "No," I said. "She's suffered enough. For today." That evening, my parents called to invite me to their anniversary party the following weekend. It was supposed to be a small gathering, just family and close friends celebrating 38 years of marriage. "Jessica's not invited," Mom said firmly. "After what she put on social media about our family, she's not welcome in our home." I almost felt bad for Jessica. Almost. Then I remembered her plan to use my breakdown for content, and the sympathy evaporated. The anniversary party was exactly what I needed, a reminder of what real love looked like. My parents had built something lasting, something based on respect and genuine partnership. Jessica and I had built nothing but an illusion held together by social media posts and shared Netflix passwords. I was helping Dad set up the backyard when Jessica's car pulled into the driveway. She'd shown up uninvited, wearing a dress that was inappropriate for a family gathering and carrying a gift bag that probably contained some desperate peace offering. "Mark!" she called out, her voice artificially bright. "I thought I'd surprise you!" The entire party stopped to stare, 30 people, including my elderly aunts and uncles, watching as my soon-to-be ex-wife made one final play for relevance. "Jessica," I said calmly, "you weren't invited." "But it's a family celebration. I'm still your wife." Not for much longer. That's when she made her final mistake. Jessica pulled out her phone and started recording, launching into a prepared speech about forgiveness and second chances and the importance of family. I let her talk for about 30 seconds, then walked over to the outdoor TV Dad had set up for the party. Eddie, bless his technical soul, had prepared a little surprise for exactly this scenario. The montage started with Jessica's Addams Family post from our first dinner, then moved through her gym videos with Brian, her cruel text messages, and finally, her tearful abuse victim performance from earlier in the week. Each clip was accompanied by a sarcastic caption that I'd written myself: "When you mistake your in-laws' home for your personal studio." Fitness influencer discovers new workout, horizontal cardio with trainer. Local woman confuses emotional abuse with consequences for actions. The party guests watched in stunned silence as Jessica's true character was revealed in high definition. When the video ended, Jessica was standing alone in the middle of the yard, her phone still recording her own humiliation. "You can post that if you want," I told her. "I'm sure your remaining followers would love to see how this story ends." Jessica finally left, but not before screaming something about lawyers and revenge and how she'd destroy me in court. The party guests actually applauded when her car disappeared down the street. Dad put his arm around my shoulder as we watched her taillights fade. "Son," he said, "I've never been prouder of you." That night, Jessica's final sponsor, a local gym chain that wasn't FitLife, announced they were terminating her contract. Her follower count dropped below 40,000 for the first time in 2 years. Brian, meanwhile, had been arrested for trespassing after trying to break into my apartment building. Apparently, unemployment and public humiliation had driven him to desperate measures. I was starting to think the war was over. I should have known Jessica had one more battle left in her. Brian's arrest made the local news, which meant Jessica's affair was now public knowledge beyond the social media sphere. The story had everything local reporters loved: sex, betrayal, social media drama, and a gym trainer who'd been caught on security cameras trying to break into his ex-lover's husband's apartment while covered in glitter. Jessica's response was to double down on the victim narrative. She posted a series of Instagram stories claiming I'd orchestrated a campaign of harassment against her and Brian, painting herself as a woman whose only crime was following her heart. The problem was that Rosa had been documenting everything, and Jessica's version of events had more holes than a screen door. When Jessica claimed I'd manipulated Brian into losing his job, Rosa posted the company's official statement about their zero-tolerance policy for employee misconduct. When Jessica said I'd sabotaged her sponsorship deals, Rosa shared screenshots of the sponsors' own words about why they'd dropped her. The final blow came when Trina, feeling the heat from her association with Jessica, sold her story to a local gossip blog called Suburban Secrets. The headline read, "Local influencer's affair exposed, the screenshots that ended a marriage." Trina had kept everything, every cruel joke about my family, every plan to manipulate me, every detail of Jessica's calculated affair. The blog post went viral, shared thousands of times across Facebook groups and Twitter threads. Jessica's remaining followers abandoned her in droves. Her Instagram comments became so toxic that she had to turn them off entirely. Her TikTok account was flooded with videos mocking her authentic lifestyle brand. But Jessica wasn't done fighting. She'd found a new ally in her mother, Carmen Martinez, who called me screaming about how I'd ruined her daughter's life and threatening to make me pay for destroying Jessica's career. "Your daughter ruined her own life," I told Carmen calmly. "I just made sure everyone could see it clearly." The conversation ended with Carmen promising to expose the truth about me on social media. I almost looked forward to seeing what she'd come up with. Jessica's final gambit was a charity challenge event she organized to rebuild her brand and show her commitment to giving back. She'd partnered with a local women's shelter, planning to live stream a fundraising workout that would, coincidentally, rehabilitate her image as a good person who'd made one tiny mistake. Rosa and I decided this was the perfect opportunity for our grand finale. The charity event was held in downtown Lexington's main square, the same place where the town held its farmers' market and summer concerts. Jessica had somehow convinced 50 people to show up, including several local news cameras that she'd pitched the story to as a redemption arc. What Jessica didn't know was that Rosa had contacted the women's shelter directly and explained exactly who Jessica was and what she'd done. The shelter's director, Sarah Walsh, no relation to Brian or Trina, was not amused to learn that her organization was being used as a prop in an influencer's image rehabilitation campaign. "We can't be associated with someone who represents the opposite of women supporting women," Sarah told the local news crew that had come to cover the event. Jessica arrived at the square in full performance mode, wearing a branded t-shirt that read, "Stronger Together," and carrying a microphone headset like she was about to perform a one-woman show. In a way, she was. Brian had been released on bail and showed up to support Jessica, apparently not understanding that his presence would only remind everyone of why we were all there in the first place. He looked like he'd been living in his car, which, given his recent unemployment, he probably had been. The event started with Jessica giving a speech about overcoming adversity and learning from mistakes. She was live streaming to her remaining followers, trying to manufacture the kind of viral moment that had once come naturally to her. That's when I made my entrance. I'd borrowed the sound system from my school's drama department, and Eddie had helped me set up speakers around the square's perimeter. While Jessica was mid-speech about female empowerment, I activated the system and began my own presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," my voice boomed across the square, "you're witnessing a master class in manipulation and narcissism. Let me show you what authenticity really looks like." The screens Eddie had positioned around the square lit up with a greatest hits compilation of Jessica's worst moments. Her cruel texts about my family, her detailed plans to exploit my breakdown for content, her mockery of the very people she was now asking for sympathy and support. Jessica tried to keep talking, but her wireless mic had mysteriously stopped working. Eddie's technical skills were proving invaluable once again. The crowd began to murmur as they realized what they were seeing. Jessica's charity event was revealed as exactly what it was, a calculated attempt to rebuild a reputation that had been destroyed by her own actions. "You see," I continued, walking through the crowd toward Jessica, "my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, wants you to believe she's a victim. But victims don't plan their betrayals. Victims don't mock their families for entertainment. Victims don't use charity events as personal branding opportunities." Brian tried to step between Jessica and me, but the security guards Rosa had hired were already moving to intercept him. He was escorted to the edge of the square, protesting loudly that he was being set up and framed. Jessica, meanwhile, was having a complete meltdown. Her carefully constructed facade cracked completely as she realized that her final attempt at redemption had become her ultimate humiliation. "You destroyed everything!" she screamed at me, her voice carrying across the square without the benefit of amplification. "I loved you. I gave you everything." "You gave me nothing but lies," I replied, my voice still calm and controlled. "You said you weren't my property, Jessica. Don't worry, you're nobody's property now, not even your own." That's when Jessica completely lost it. She charged at me, all fake nails and fury, screaming incoherently about revenge and lawyers and destroying my life. I stepped aside, letting her momentum carry her into the fountain at the center of the square. The splash was magnificent. Jessica emerged from the water looking like a drowned cat, her makeup running down her face, her Stronger Together t-shirt clinging to her body, her phone, which she'd been clutching throughout her meltdown, completely destroyed. The crowd, which had been watching in stunned silence, erupted in laughter and applause. Phones came out to record Jessica's final moment of public humiliation. The local news cameras captured every second of her breakdown. Security helped Jessica out of the fountain, but the damage was done. She was finished. Not just as an influencer, but as a public figure of any kind. No brand would ever associate with her again. No follower would ever take her seriously again. As Jessica was led away, dripping and defeated, I turned to address the crowd one final time. "The charity you came here to support is real," I said. "The Women's Shelter does important work, helping people who are actual victims of actual abuse. If you'd like to donate, please do so directly through their official channels. Don't let one person's manipulation discourage you from supporting a worthy cause." The crowd dispersed slowly, many people stopping to shake my hand or pat my back. The local news crew interviewed several attendees, all of whom expressed disgust at Jessica's attempted manipulation and admiration for my creative justice. Rosa found me as I was helping Eddie pack up the sound equipment. "So," she said, grinning, "how does it feel to win?" I looked around the square, where maintenance workers were already cleaning up the mess from Jessica's charity event disaster. In a few hours, there would be no trace that any of this had happened. The farmers' market would set up tomorrow morning, families would come to buy fresh vegetables and homemade bread, and life would go on. "It feels like justice," I said. "Finally." That night, Jessica's social media accounts went dark. Her Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter profiles all disappeared within hours of the fountain incident. Brian left town, reportedly moving back in with his parents in Ohio. Trina tried to reach out to me, apparently hoping to monetize her role in the drama, but I blocked her number. Some stories don't need sequels. My divorce was finalized 3 months later. Jessica didn't contest anything. She couldn't afford a lawyer, and her reputation was so toxic that no attorney wanted to be associated with her case. I kept the house, the savings account, and my dignity. Jessica kept her delusions and a viral video of her fountain meltdown that would follow her for the rest of her life. 6 months after the charity event disaster, I ran into Maria Santos, the boutique owner who'd been Jessica's first sponsor to bail. She told me that Jessica had applied for a job at her store, using a fake name and hoping her drastically different appearance would fool people. "I recognized her immediately," Maria said, "but I let her fill out the entire application before I told her we don't hire people who represent the opposite of our values." I almost felt sorry for Jessica. Almost. But then I remembered her plan to use my breakdown for content, her mockery of my family, her casual cruelty disguised as authenticity. Some people deserve their consequences. I teach my students that every story has a beginning, middle, and end. Jessica's story as an influencer had ended in that fountain, with her phone destroyed and her reputation in ruins. My story, on the other hand, was just beginning.